Have you ever tried building a 3x3 door in Minecraft? It's a pretty high-level challenge, but honestly, the feeling of seeing your door finally work is unbeatable. If you've already tried one, maybe you stopped there, satisfied with the result. Some of you probably tried to go further with a 4x4, and others may have tried shrinking their design. Maybe you even managed to fit your whole circuit in one block wide. But that's not what I'm interested for this video. I'm interested in the people who ask themselves this question: how can I make it faster? There's a good chance your first 3x3 was pretty slow, so naturally some people started optimizing the timings and got some pretty interesting results. But then the next question is, where's the limit? The door you are looking at is built entirely in vanilla Minecraft. Yep, the game didn't lie. That door really did close instantly. And it's possible thanks to a bug that's now considered a full-on feature, the zero tick. To understand what that means, we first need to look at how Minecraft works under the hood. Imagine that all the code running the game, controlling mobs, growing crops, and handling redstone interaction is inside one giant loop that runs constantly. Every time that loop runs, the game calculates everything it needs. On a lag-free computer, that loop runs exactly 20 times per second, and one cycle of that loop is called a tick. So there are 20 ticks in 1 second. Now that we have that key concept, let's look at how a piston can teleport a block. To do that, we need to take a closer look at sticky pistons. A sticky piston can push and pull a block. When you activate it, it takes 3 ticks to fully extend. Then, when you deactivate it, it takes another 3 ticks to retract. But now, watch what happens if I deactivate it before it has finished extending. It stops mid-motion, immediately starts retracting, and lets go of its block. And if you look closely, it almost looks like the block teleports. That's because in a way it does, but this still isn't truly instant like I promised at the beginning of the video, because you first have to activate the piston, then deactivate it. Except you can actually do both of those during the same tick. That's called a zero tick. To generate these zero ticks, we need to understand another piston property: quasi-connectivity. This is another bug that has existed since pistons were added, and it's now treated as a feature. The bugs come from a simple mistake. When pistons were implemented, Jeb simply copied and pasted the code from doors. But there's one important difference between a piston and a door. I'll let you guess it. Yes, a door is 2 blocks tall, and a piston is not. Because of that mistake, a piston can be activated by powering the block above it, just like a door. At this point, you might think I've been lying to you, but watch what happens when I do this. Now the piston activates. So what happened? Why didn't it activate the first time? For a redstone component to activate, 2 things are required. It has to be powered, and it has to receive an update telling it to activate. Usually, the thing powering the component also gives it the update. For example, here, the lever powers the piston and updates it, so the piston activates. But in this setup, the lever is too far away to update the piston directly. The piston is powered, but it doesn't know it yet. It's in a quantum state where it is both powered and not powered at the same time. This is called a BUD, for block update detector. Or we can also say that the piston is quasi-powered. So when I place a block next to it, that updates the piston and it activates. This is the same thing that happens when you find a weird water source while exploring, and it suddenly starts flowing when you break a grass next to it. So for a piston to activate and deactivate, it needs to be updated. There are many ways to update a piston, such as a nut block, a rail, a bell, a copper bulb, a shelf, leaves, scaffolding, and another piston. And that last option is the one we care about. Take this example. What will happen when I will flip the lever? The first piston activates normally. The second piston also activates, because it is quasi-powered and receives an update from the first piston. Then it activates and updates the next piston, and so on. The update propagates from piston to piston. Except we didn't see that happen. That's because everything I just described did happen, but all during the same tick. And the same thing also happens when I deactivate the lever. At first, this might seem pointless, just another complicated way of activating a bunch of pistons, but it actually gives us a complete control over the order in which pistons activate. Here I'm using a mod that lets us see what happens inside a tick. We can clearly see that the pistons activate in order. Now I'm going to add a few extra components to our contraption. Here, when I deactivate the lever, the block here gets removed, allowing the redstone dust to connect and power the piston at the end. Then, a little bit later, the redstone block gets pulled away, which depowers the redstone dust and the piston. The piston then drops its block, and if I remove the mod, this is what it looks like. So, we've successfully teleported a block using a zero tick. But what's even more interesting is that zero ticks can be chained, and pistons themselves can be zero ticked too. In this example, the piston zero ticks the block here. Then, another piston gets pushed behind the block, and once it arrives, that piston also gets zero ticked to push the block again. At normal speed, it looks like this. In reality, there are many different ways to generate and chain zero ticks, and you can bet the redstone community has been incredibly creative with this mechanic. I'm absolutely fascinated by all the possibilities this mechanic offers, and nothing feels more satisfying to me than building a fast door and seeing it work. Let's go back to the 3x3 from the beginning and try to understand how it works. This is a door I built while trying to improve my first zero-tick 3x3, which I made a video about. Let's remove all the extra wiring and keep only the pistons. I'm also going to assign a letter to each group of pistons that matters here. To make the door as fast as possible, we want to retrieve the center block as soon as possible. That's why piston C is ready to grab it, but there's a block in front of it. So in the same tick, piston A zero ticks to free piston B, which then frees piston C. After those pistons finish moving, 3 ticks have passed, and the center block is free. We can remove most of the other blocks using pistons F, but there are still 2 blocks left, and they need to be pulled by pistons E. Before that, we have to activate pistons D to remove the pistons blocking the way. So we activate D and then E in the same tick, and wait another 3 ticks for them to finish. The final step isn't strictly necessary, but it hides the piston that would otherwise remain visible. We activate piston G, then H to pull the piston, and finally I to hide everything. And just like that, the door finishes opening in 9 ticks, or 0.45 seconds. To close the door, we can repeat the whole process in reverse order, but all within the same tick. So we start by activating I, then H, then G to bring back our piston, then E and D to place those 2 blocks, and finally C, B and A. Pistons F can activate whenever we want to handle the remaining blocks. I'm going to write down the opening and closing sequence so we can compare them. What we notice is that some sequences appear in both orders. For example, DE and ED are 2 different sequences, but ideally we'd like a single circuit that can perform both. A circuit like that is called an ABA, because it can activate AB in one direction and BA in the other. Here's an example of an ABA that used to be very popular. I'm not going to go into full detail about how it works, but I'll demonstrate it. Here are our 2 pistons connected to the ABA. When I activate it from this side, it activates A first, then B. And when I activate it from the other side, it activates B first, then A. Here's what it looks like with the mod. And to make an ABC CBA, you simply extend an ABA. So in my door, the circuit that activates ABC then CBA is here. The circuit that activates GHI then IHG is at the top, and the circuit for DE and ED is over here. And once everything is connected, it looks like this. In practice, ABA circuits are used less often today because they are too big and redstoners usually try to design around them. For fun, here's a size comparison between the current smallest record and my door. Yeah. So that's awesome that we can make a door that closes instantly. But what about opening it? The problem with ZeroTick is that while we can push a block instantly, we can't spurl it instantly. That means a door's opening speed is still limited, so we need to find another solution. Perhaps another even stranger and more ridiculous bug. And what if I told you that such a bug exists? This is a bedrock breaking setup, and it relies on yet another very unusual piston property: decapitation. It turns out that a piston head is much more fragile than it looks. With a carefully timed explosion, you can remove it. That leaves you with a headless piston. The piston is still considered extended, except its arm and head simply don't exist anymore. It has the special property that when it retracts, it can delete any block directly in front of it, including bedrock or an end portal. But that's not all. In certain configurations, a headless piston can also immediately stop a moving block, effectively teleporting the block. So where is this going? Well, this gives us instant retraction. We can begin retracting a block normally, then retract a headless piston during the same tick to teleport the block to its final position. And there we go. But there are still a few problems. First of all, we need an explosion to make a headless piston. For example, we can trigger TNT using a dispenser, but that means we need a TNT supply, and a door that can be opened a limited number of times isn't really a door. Fortunately, there's a solution redstoners have known for a long time: the TNT duper. The basic idea is to activate a TNT at the same time it is moved, which allows the TNT to be primed while still keeping the original block. A more practical and faster method uses TNT minecarts. This system can activate a TNT minecart and destroy it at the exact same moment it explodes. The minecart is dispensed here, activated by this activator rail, and pushed by this piston. It reaches this rail just as it explodes. At the same time, these two cacti break the minecart, allowing it to drop as an item and be collected by the hopper below. So yes, we reach an absurd point where we have to fit whole TNT dupers inside doors. There's still a second problem. Because the headless piston is extended, it can't be moved, but most of the time, the explosion is too far away from the spot where we actually need the headless piston. Luckily, it turns out that piston decapitation is actually contagious. A headless piston can pass its missing head to another piston, and then that piston can pass it on again, until the effect reaches the piston we actually care about. Thanks to this technique, Jen Shullard and D Commander RS were able to break speed records for 1x1, 2x2 and even 3x3 doors. This is where the field of fast redstone doors stands today. Most records are broken when someone finds a new and creative way to use slime blocks and ZeroTicks. That's actually how I achieved my first record. And every now and then, a new use for headless pistons pushes some records even further. This video was made for the SOAR competition, hosted by mattbatwings and CraftyMasterman, without whom I probably wouldn't have had the motivation to make this video. I also wanted to use this video as an opportunity to start a new project. I'd like to create a tutorial series on ZeroTick, starting from the basics and exploring the topic in a complete way, but I have no idea whether people will be interested. So if this video helps me gain 100 subscribers, I'll start making the tutorial series. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.